right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking to Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger. Pivotal week for the Auburn Tigers and the Arkansas Razorbacks. They're actually at unique crossroads. No one would have thought that Arkansas would already have a SEC win under their belt after consecutive losses in the SEC. We have Kyle Sutherland from the Hog Talk podcast. I mean, you can find this podcast pretty much anywhere. Apple, Spotify, all the major podcasting arenas. Kyle, what you got tonight, man?
Well, man, first of all, it's good to talk with you. I know we always enjoy when we talk a little college football and Auburn and Razorbacks, but it's a very intriguing game. Of course, Arkansas on the road for the second straight week, as you said, it's a very big win, at least for their standards, considering you hadn't won an SEC game in 1,071 days. But I think that this is going to be a dogfight. You got players. I mean, definitely the Auburn players have been a little more vocal about the whole Chad Morris thing than the Razorback players have. But there's no question that it's personal for both of these squads. I know that the Razorbacks haven't really talked about anything in terms of just saying that they're focused on the game. But I do think, again, it's going to be a dogfight and it's going to be very close.
You know, I really like, Arkansas, even in their effort against Auburn last year. I think they moved the ball at certain points pretty well. Chad Morris did utilize the tight end some, and I saw where, at points, you could tell that Rokeem Boyd was a big part of the game plan. First of all, tell me about Rokeem Boyd, and I hear he may be injured and may or may not be able to play. What's his status coming up this week?
He got hurt in the first quarter against Mississippi State, and he had already been given 8 carries. So you know that they were really wanting to work him as they should. That should have been the game plan because we wanted to get the run game going and hoping to do that this week. But, yeah, he is injured, and I haven't heard anything updated. It's probably not going to be mentioned by any of the coaching staff until game day. But my gut is telling me that he won't play. I hope that I'm wrong, but my gut is telling me that he will be one of the players that will not suit up. They're going to have a lot of guys banged up. I think some will play, just not at 100% that some of the guys that got hurt last week. But Rakeem he is our offense. He's the reason why he came back is for big games like this, and you really need him in a game against Auburn as quality of a team as they are. But of course, his health is first and foremost. But the offense runs through him, but we're just not 100% sure we're going to have him.
And on the same token, on the defensive side of the football field, you got KJ Britt, all these SEC linebacker, who will be out indefinitely due to torn ligaments in his thumb. And when you play linebacker, it's pretty hard to fight through those tackles and maneuver without the use of your thumb, especially when you have to grab people and throw them out of the way, things of that nature. So he might be out for a little while. So Auburn battling some injuries as well. So how do you feel, though, about what has Sam Pittman done to change? Because the last time you talked about a divided locker room with Chad Morris. What has Sam Pittman done to kind of boost the morale? Because it seemed like those guys feel really good about what they're doing.
Yeah, I think he just came in and he was a breath of fresh air. You think about under Chad Morris there, like you mentioned that we talked about the last time, there was just a lot of division. You had coaches mad at coaches, players mad at coaches, players mad at players, and it just wasn't a good situation. And basically, I think Coach Pittman pretty much came in from when he addressed them for the first time, when he first got hired, he said, you didn't choose me, I chose you. And he set the standard that he really cared about these guys and they were going to win with the ones that they had in the locker room. None of this, like when Chad Morris first came in, he pretty much told him, I would not be here if you didn't need me. And was a little arrogant throughout his tenure. But, I have nothing against Chad. I think it was just something that didn't work out. But it's just really it's a lot healthier, I guess you could say, of a culture than it was under this previous staff. And Sam's just been – a lot of people question the hire because he's never been a head coach, never been a position coach, a coordinator, let alone a head coach. And he's hired a great staff, as we've talked about so many different times within our fan base, and has just done a lot of positive things.
We talk about historically, Arkansas entered the SEC in 1992 after having been in the Southwestern Conference for the majority, if not all, of their tenure as a college football team. What would you say, and let's just talk about Arkansas versus Auburn, what would you say would be probably your favorite game that you've seen between these two teams?
That's a good one. I probably have to say 2006. Well, that
Okay.
was when we went to the SEC championship game that year. We went to Auburn, and I believe Auburn was ranked. I know they were top 5. I want to say they were number 2. And that's when we really realized, man, we got an awesome. And of course, Gus was our offensive coordinator that season. And just we realized that we had a really solid team with Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, Marcus Monk, true freshman Mitch Mustaine, which that, of course, ended up not working out too well in the end. But I would say probably that '06 game was a really big one.
And that's huge, especially considering with Arkansas in the SEC West. Wins in the SEC West are very hard to come by. Arkansas has had kind of an up and down tenure in the SEC. Has some really bright spots. One of my favorite games, and it's not necessarily because Auburn won the game. The game was just so freaking entertaining. It was the 2010 game when Auburn won the national championship,
Yeah.
welcomes Matt Flynn and the Arkansas Razorbacks into town. And I will tell you, that is the last game that I attended in person. And I was actually exhausted. All the scoring, all the highlights of that particular football game, it was just one of those pivotal moments when I realized, okay, this is a game that I absolutely did not expect to win. I still think Arkansas had the better football team, but Auburn, just like they had done all year, figured out ways to win, even with an inconsistent defense and being kind of, I wouldn't say one-dimensional, but you take Cam Newton out of that offense, and that's a totally different scene, kind of like with Rokeem Boyd. But I think that was one of my favorite Auburn versus Arkansas games to watch. And since then, though, the series has been a little on the lopsided side. Um, Auburn has won the games by at least 2 or 3 touchdowns. Hadn't been close. The one that I feel that Arkansas probably played better, but were statistically better, but made so many mistakes that they made it was probably one of the worst 34-3 wins in Auburn history when Auburn won 34-3 in 2018 and did everything they could to lose the game. But Arkansas did everything they could to give the game back to Auburn. So it's definitely some interesting games in this series. Not necessarily a headliner, so to speak, but Auburn and Arkansas has been a staple in the SEC West, especially since their arrival. Now, what are your thoughts on Bo Nix? Bo Nix, a 5-star recruit out of Pinson Valley High School, garnished pretty much every award that a high school player can have. Mr. Alabama, won a state championship. What do you think? How do you think of his progression from um, somewhat elite play in Alabama high school football, transferring that to Power Five? What do you think has been the issue for Bo Nix?
Well, I think it starts with the offensive line. You look at Auburn's offensive line; they're subbing guys out for the first time in Gus Malzahn's tenure. I know you guys got about 7, 8 guys in the rotation, 2 of them being converted defensive linemen. So you're trying to get your feet wet there. Just that's similar to what Arkansas is trying to do and has been really since Sam Pittman had left in 2015. And so I think that those issues are one of the reasons for the offensive struggles. Of course, you don't really know what you got. I'm not sure if Sean Shivers? That's the one that has been banged up, and I'm not sure if he's going to be playing or not. I think
Yeah, Sean Shivers.
yeah, and so they're not. It's looking like if he does play, he's not going to be 100%. So what will Tank Bigsby do behind him? I know that the coaching staff has a lot of faith in him, and so it's really just kind of. Does he trust his offensive line? I'm not so sure. I don't think he played horribly against Kentucky. It definitely wasn't what Auburn fans were probably wanting to see in the first game. But, yeah, the Georgia game, Georgia, they are what they are. Arkansas found that out. Auburn found that out. I think Georgia's just really on a whole nother level than at least the East. I'm not going to say the whole entire SEC. I think Alabama looks like a pretty complete team. But Georgia brings back 65% of their offense. They're going to stop a lot of people this year. But I think Bo just really, to sum up everything I just said, I think really they have to figure out the offensive line first. What five are you going to continue to go with? That's Gus Malzahn's flow is you're going to play pretty much consistent five offensive linemen. You're going to have to run the ball. You're going to have to pound the ball. That's what he likes to do, and they just haven't figured that out quite yet.
Yeah, and that is it's interesting that you say that. Counter that with the defense allowing about 6 yards per play on first down against Georgia. That really keeps your team off balance. That keeps the offense on the football field. That gives a freshman quarterback in Stetson Bennett. You have I don't care who you are as a quarterback. If you have second down and 3 to work with pretty much the majority of the game, not only is the playbook open, but your confidence in what what you can do. You can hand the ball off. You can dump the ball off and get another first down and then pound Auburn for another 7 yards on first down and control the clock and take plenty of pressure off of Stetson Bennett. And guess who that puts pressure on? That puts pressure on the Auburn offense to try to score quickly against a team that just does not give up points. Now, last but not least, I want to get your take on the transfer of Felipe Franks. He had some successes, some failures at Florida. What is the Arkansas fan base? What do they think about this transfer, and what do you think he will bring to the program?
Well, I've been skeptical of Felipe. So I've followed him since his early years at Florida, and I think that he has the build. I think that he has the arm, and he's shown some great things. But what's always concerned me about him, and I've said this many times, is if his first read is not there, once he realizes that he's not always the greatest at being patient and looking at his second and third read, he'll go straight to the check down, or he'll throw it away, or he'll tuck it and run when he just shouldn't do that. And again, I go back to the offensive line issues. I talked about it with Auburn, and Arkansas has them too. It's really that I don't think this whole entire offense is meshed together. Georgia shut down Rakeem Boyd. Mississippi State, he got knocked out in the first quarter. So you've had to rely on Traylon Smith, who hasn't done a bad job. He's the transfer from Arizona State. But Felipe has made some really good throws. He made some to Davion Warren the other night, who had a really big game. And we've seen it. We saw it a couple of times in the Georgia game too, especially on the touchdown to Treylon Burks. So I think he does have a lot of potential. I think that he and Kendall Briles, the offensive coordinator, that they'll get this offense rolling at some point. But will that some point be against Auburn? Will it be against Ole Miss the next week? It's really just kind of, it needs to happen soon. But when will it be?
And the tricky part about this is normally in a in a normal schedule format, you have those cupcake games that now we're seeing the importance of those, especially for teams like Auburn and Arkansas, who are bringing back a lot of young guys that really having to mix some things up, not having the benefit of spring training or a real summer camp. That would have been very beneficial to both teams. But then you think about playing an early game. Both of these guys played early games against Georgia, who are so talented, it can supplement not having all that. Talented and experienced to where it could supplement not having all of that in place. So, they're having to figure this out in the fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it can be kind of difficult to have to figure it out when the stakes are so high. You don't want to have to figure it out when the stakes are high. You want to have it all figured out by then. But unfortunately, a good portion of the SEC is having to figure this thing out without having the training or coaching or barely even know the coach. Like Chad Morris at Auburn, for example, he didn't have a spring. Sam Pittman didn't have a spring, to really get to know his guys. So he's building it based off morale. But as far as tangible coaching and really knowing what the culture of your team is, like I said, it could be mid-season before any of these teams, unless you're Alabama and Georgia, figure this all the way out.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I was just going to say that you're exactly right. I just don't think we think about enough that it's already sloppy just about at the beginning of every season when they have a full off season with spring practice and your typical traditional fall camps. And so it takes time then when you have the typical schedule that you always do. But I think that sometimes we need to pinch ourselves and realize that this is a totally different kind of year.
All right, man. So this is sneakily the prediction show for Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn for the week. And I'm going to be polite, and I'm going to be hospitable. And I'm going to Cal Sutherland's pick for this Auburn versus Arkansas game.
I picked them. I said that I was going to keep it between 7 and 3, so a touchdown and a field goal. But I'm going to go. I think I put Auburn 20, Razorbacks 17. I think it's going to be close. But
Okay.
I just don't think that Arkansas quite. I said that I didn't think that they would be able to win on the road. They did do that, but I do think Auburn's just a little bit too much.
Okay. Well, absolutely fair. And I'm going to give my guys. It's prediction time here on Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. We're talking Auburn football. I have Auburn, who hasn't eclipsed the 30-point mark this year yet. I have Auburn with a 28-17 win over Arkansas at home. They get some things together. The offensive line, they play consistent, and that's going to be my pick, 28-17. I really appreciate you guys listening tonight. Really appreciate Cal Sutherland from Hog Talk coming to talk to us. In final words, Cal.
Oh man, just hoping for another good game. We've seen a lot already just in the 2 weeks we've seen at SEC, and again, I do think that this is going to be a really hard fought and just a lot of grit and toughness. One of those type things. It's going to be wet, whether it's raining or not. So, just hoping for a good game. But always good talking to you, my man.
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, assuming there'll be a basketball season, we definitely got to get caught up because, as a matter of fact, when we were going to do that interview for basketball, that's when all this COVID stuff hit. But anyway, thankful that you stopped by. And Auburn fans and the SEC fans out there, once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast Talking Auburn Football and, of course, SEC football. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.